just realizing, doing stuff for other people makes a difference. And again, like I said, it's just like buying coffee in line for someone behind you, that it just gives you this feeling. And when you just try it, if you haven't done that out there listening to this podcast, acts of kindness are part of being, gracious, having gratitude. So see how you feel.
Stay connected to gratitude. Hit the follow button right now and join thousands of listeners tuning in each week. We're the Gratitude Seekers. Come join us. Hi, Gratitude Seeker. Welcome to a new episode of the Gratitude Podcast. Our guest from today has a really inspiring story, and what I believe that is really inspiring regarding his story is the fact that, in spite of all of the challenges that he went through, he was able not only to overcome them, but to also become a person of inspiration that motivates other people, that is a leader. And aside from this, but actually most importantly, he helps people every day by being a surgeon. Our guest from today, welcome Craig Thayer to the Gratitude Podcast.
Thank you, Georgine. It's an honor to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. And I'm really happy that we get to spend this time together, that we get to speak about your story, about the book that you've wrote, and also about all the challenges and how you were able to find gratitude in spite of all of the challenges that you went through. So let us know a little bit about you, about your story.
That's easy to do since I know it well. Yeah, I want to just start by saying that I love what you're doing, Georgine, because I think gratitude is something we should start with at the beginning of each day and add kindness to that, so that, this world, the thing about gratitude to me is it's a separation, it's a humbling of me to stop and eliminate myself from the equation and recognize that I got where I am, not because of what I did necessarily, but everything else that occurred in my life. And my cup is always half full. So the book is that. It's about miracles in my life, or just the story where other things had impact on me to get me where I am today and where I'm going. My natural mother was pregnant. She was engaged to my father. They lived in Michigan. My wife is like a private investigator. She found them. She'd already passed away, so I never got to meet her. But she was Christian. She was Catholic and starting to show at 6 months. And she would have been really kind of shunned back in the 60s. So she moved to California. She had me in Monterey and gave me up for adoption 10 days after she had me. She had me baptized. But if she had not made that choice, not that I think she ever would have considered that, but especially because of her faith, that part of the adoption was that I be raised Christian, specifically Catholic. And who better than that, being a woman born in Ireland who moved to America when she was 21, which is my mom, and a great dad. So I had this blessed life from the beginning. One, to be here. Two, to be raised that way. It turned out that, a lot of people will think the things I'm going to say are, wow, how did this, and why are you positive about it? Because I do have gratitude for these things. For like example, my mom, we discovered my sister and I, who was also adopted, discovered one night when my dad was opening the front door, and we started to walk in, and my mom was on the floor in the kitchen, and my dad closed the door, leaving us outside. And that's when we found out she had an alcohol problem. And I mean, I went to my first AA meeting with her when I was 11. So, and you hear these people's testimony on, my name's John, I'm an alcoholic, and they're working through their life. And it created me as an empath, and I mean, I think I was an arguer. So, and my mom was too, being Irish. And I would always argue with her. One week I'd be on one side of the argument, and the next week I could be on the other. But I gave more credit to my dad by sitting me down and patiently going, look at your body language, look at your tone of voice, think before you speak, engage brain before mouth is the way he would say it. But yeah, I mean, I have gratitude for that education, and it made me a better doctor by far. And then I had a twisted intestine when I was a junior in high school, just before the end of the year, and bounced back from that. And I really liked medicine. I had an anatomy physiology class my junior year, and the human body was amazing. And I was doing things I was tutoring some blind students in geometry. So I had to think outside the box. How do you show them a circle? But so I knew I liked to help people. Loved working with my hands. And then medicine was it with that anatomy physiology class. So just to, these series of things that if hadn't been there, I may not have been in the same spot. And then college was, devastating. My mom died my freshman year of a heart attack. It's a quarter system, so it's 10 weeks. It's really accelerated. You miss even a few days and you can be way behind. So I missed a few days going home to be with my dad to help take care of stuff, and then came back. My all-male dorm floor was like, he'll never come back. I did. I finished. If I hadn't, it would have been 5 years of undergraduate, and it would have thrown off my schedule to become a surgeon. So, and then my junior year, I was in a bicycle accident, cracked my skull, had spinal fluid coming out of my ear. That was a 2-week stay in the hospital for that to stop so I wouldn't get meningitis on antibiotics. And then junior year, my dad gets diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, goes through chemo and radiation, wants me to stay there. I had this magical phone line that it was a old school when you had to pay for long distance calls. You plugged your phone into a wall jack. And there was one in the hallway. I was in an off-campus dorm with 4 other roommates. And I would never get a charge. The room didn't get a charge. I checked in with the office and they said, there's no charge we're getting either. So, I mean, long distance calling was free for me. That was just crazy. So talk about gratitude for a college student. I don't have to call home with a sick dad. Hey, Dad, I need more money. And then he passed away between my junior and senior year. So I had a senior year where I was all on my own for the first time. But I had this incredible grandmother who was there for pretty much all my adult life. So college graduation, medical school graduation, finishing my 6-year residency program, and married, divorced, married, 5 kids. And then she encouraged me for 15 years to write this book. And so I finally did. I got motivated after Grant Cardone, who's like more about business, 10X conference. He's a land developer and real estate guy. But there were like 4 people that didn't even know me that would hear things and said, you need to be on that stage to, inspire people, give them motivation, make them feel like they belong, give them hope. And so I started, and at that conference, I met someone who taught me how to record a book. He had an editor who I connected with, and then app called Rev. I could just speak into the phone, and then I'd have something written out that I could download into my computer and edit myself, and then send it to that editor. And then, so that took me about 1.5 years to write the book. And I mean, if these things weren't in place, the book wouldn't have been done. So yeah, you look back, hindsight's 2020, that there's so many things you can have gratitude for that have inspired me. I mean, I would say, look at what I did, never give up. I just never gave up. I had someone said it's resilience or tenacity or stubbornness. I just knew what I wanted to do, and I had a passion to do it. I knew what gifts I had, which are healing, teaching, and empathy. So that works really well in medicine. And it's not the usual character of a surgeon either. We're usually those gruff, not very good bedside doctors. So I wanted to change that.
Wow, that's wonderful, and there are so many parts of your story that I would love for us to get into. I didn't want to interrupt you in
Yeah,
any way
no, yeah.
because I wanted you to be able to tell your story as you see fit. Um, but I'm I'm really curious, when did you first get to experience gratitude? Like in all of those challenging times, when did you discover gratitude?
I have to think it's one of the stories in the book when I played water polo in high school and college. And our high school team traveled to Hawaii, and we were on a bus. And on the bus was this man who was probably in his late 30s. He's crying. He's got his wallet in his hand. I go over and ask him what's going on, and he says, and then I could smell he was drunk. Hey, my wife just kicked me out of the house, and and because I'm drinking too much, and these are my kids. He's got two kids, and I think I realized at that moment, look, I just was given this gift of my mom was an alcoholic. I knew who to call or try. So when we got off the bus to where we stopped, he got off with us, and we called the Catholic Church. And unfortunately, because he was drunk, they didn't want to have anything to do with him. And then we called Alcoholics Anonymous for a sponsor. And same thing, they wanted him to be sober when he came to that organization. So, but I knew what to do. And a police officer came over and asked us questions and said, don't give him money because he's just going to go drink more. But we still did. There was one of my teammates with me, Sinan Taisi. So I realized that, man, this was a horrible situation. My mom became sober, though, for the last 8 years of her life. And that was a blessing, another gratitude moment. So just realizing that I am learning things from life to have gratitude about. And that was the moment, I think, that I really realized, look, I've been blessed with education that's life education, not just book.
Yeah, definitely. The theory and the reality in many situations, it's uh, a whole different story.
Yeah,
And yeah, the fact that you have this kind of experience and that you're able to share it with the world one way or another through the work that you're doing is actually a blessing for the world. Like aside for it being your own blessing, I'm sure that for your patients as well, the fact that you have these life skills is a blessing. And I was thinking, I'm not sure if I'm going in the right direction with this, so
that's
let
okay.
me
Any
know.
direction is fine. Yeah.
Um, I'm guessing you see a lot of situations of life and death situations. Um, and I'm curious if you've seen people change their appreciation of life due to this kind of life or death situations, or as you like to talk about them, the miracles.
Right. Yes, absolutely would be the answer. But to add to that, um, I think just recently I heard the phrase, I've had a close relationship with death that a lot of people don't have. And I've seen patients that have had complications from something I've done. You remove part of the colon and you hook it back up and it leaks. And that person then is extremely sick and amazingly pulls through. Uh, and he has these dreams that you can't. I mean, it changed that person for life, that he was way overweight, not healthy, not living a great life. And he, I mean, comes back to my office for the first visit. He goes, man, I, th- I, s- I think he more saw the face of the devil than God, this skull and crossbones, and just said, look, this was a wake up moment for me. And, same with families. I mean, it just doesn't have to be the patients. I mean, I have a story in the book about a local judge that was retired and had a ruptured aneurysm, life and death situation. Um, and he survived for 2.5, 3 months. And so he has 3 daughters and a second wife. And their dedication to being there 24/7 was incredible. So incredible that, and especially when a patient's in the ICU that long, the nurses get very tied up, and they're not used to that. They're used, I mean, COVID was devastating to nurses. I mean, you knew if you saw a ventilator or the breathing machine outside of the room that the patient was on death's door. So they lost so many people. The ER physicians weren't used to seeing death. They'll see someone maybe coming in under CPR and they don't get them back, or a trauma case like that we can't get back. But there were so many people that were there. They're mentally there, can't speak very well because they're short of breath. But um, yeah, I think there are so many stories like that you just see changes. It's time to really examine yourself. What's my purpose? What are my gifts? Make it a passion and move forward. That's what I did. My passion was surgery, to use the things that I knew I had talents in. So I think people need to do that. Just examine yourself. You can take self-assessment tests that kind of tell you what direction you can go in, and then think of things that you can use those in. Especially, I mean, helping people, man, there's just such a reward to that. Just open a door. Or you know what I love to do is, I'm in a car line at Starbucks or any coffee shop that's got a drive-through, and I buy the person's coffee behind me. They don't know who I am in the car. They shouldn't never know who I am in the car, but the glow you get inside for doing that, it's like, it's worth it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's actually spreading the gratitude, like
Yeah,
when you help someone out, of course, they feel grateful for the fact that you were so thoughtful to do that, to pay it forward, to pay the coffee for the next person in line, or just to hold the door. It just um, makes people feel grateful,
yeah, yeah,
and it's wonderful that we can do that. I mean, we all want a different kind of world, and the best place to start with is ourselves, right?
yep,
If we can do something about it, even if it's small gestures of this sort, they can really have a huge impact. And we never know, like it might be something that uh, makes someone's day, even if for us it's maybe something small that we're doing.
right.
Of course, in your line of work, I'm guessing you're doing some huge things for people actually, and you're helping in a big way. And I'm curious if there is a story of gratitude from any of your patients that comes to your heart or to your mind right now.
Yeah, I think, the biggest one I think was the gentleman I mentioned with the partial removal of his colon and the leak. Because, I mean, he just came back saying, I would still be in this path I was before if it weren't for having this horrific, stay at the hospital. So, um, the reality is, like, I go on medical mission trips and I do hernias. I think I do, can't believe how many I do. I'll do almost a third of what I do in America in Honduras in 4 days, 4.5 days, but
Wow.
44 hernias and 4 gallbladder surgeries, 4.5 days. And you don't really get to see the ripple of what you do. I mean, who knows? I may have operated on someone's gallbladder that could have become infected. They could have died, and they were young, and they become a politician in Honduras, or they become a entrepreneur, and they create some company that benefits Honduras. I never know. I do get, well, I have a couple things that tell me I'm doing okay. Honduras has got the highest murder rate in the world. So if I were doing bad for the last, I started in 2010, I think they would have killed me by now. So um, if I had a lot of complications when I came back, they call me the gray gringo because I have gray hair. So, and I'm wearing scrubs that are green. And apparently one year after COVID, I didn't go, and there was a lot of flooding that year, and there was a river that was still pretty high, and there was someone on the other side of the river that was on the trip that I normally go on in scrubs and had gray hair. So this one Honduran crosses this dangerous river just to come over and thinking it was me, thanking me for what I'd done for him. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, the guy said, "No, I'm not the gray gringo. So you'll have to wait till he comes back next year."
That's such a wonderful story, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an act of gratitude. He was risking his life to come over just to say thank you.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
That puts things into perspective, right? Like when we think about going out of our way to express our gratitude, this is actually a really vivid picture of that. Like
Yeah.
they really are going out of their way to say thank you and to show their appreciation. On that, I'm really curious if you've seen any cultural differences in the places where you've been. Like usually when people go to other countries, usually poorer countries, they get to appreciate their life here more, like wherever they are.
Yeah, totally.
Has that happened to you?
Yeah. So what I see in Honduras is, I think when you grow up in a culture that's hard, physically hard, you have to go get water, and otherwise you'd be drinking contaminated water, which is the biggest thing. And my wife has a nonprofit for putting in clean wells in different countries, Honduras, Haiti, Africa. But yeah, I mean, in the culture, it's the women that gather the water. So they may spend 8 hours a day just going to get fresh water. I mean, that's just
Oh my God.
not a waste of time, but it's a lot of time because they have to do it. So, and so because they're more, every day is not a guarantee. I think I see a lot more Christianity or faith in other things. And I think that again, that helps us. I don't care what faith you have. I think it's great that you do, if you do, because you rely on something bigger than you, right? So that's what they have to do in order to feel like they're safe. And so I see that. I mean, I see fear. I remember a wife, after it was just a hernia surgery, so it wasn't high risk for not making it, but literally on her knees, just crying her eyes out, praying at the foot of the bed of her husband because he made it through surgery. And I'm like, those are things I take for granted. I just know they're gonna, but I mean, it made it real. These people are, I mean, they're really afraid. And here they are. They meet me, briefly, and then, okay, we're going to schedule this for the next few days. And then they come and I do my thing. And I mean, the amount of trust they give me in such a brief time is crazy. But yeah, and the other cultural differences that I've seen, just they're close, they're a team. They help each other. Their houses are made of mud walls, adobe. The roof is usually thatch, although we have a team usually putting on aluminum, corrugated metal. Sometimes we knock one of the walls over because it's not steady and needs the roof to keep it up.
Oh
But
my God.
yeah, and this is a widow wife. This is her only place, and I don't go out and do the construction. I'm in the operating room, but these guys, they'd come back. I mean, one of the guys is a good friend of mine. He's a tile layer, and he was out. They were putting in a well. And one day at the end of the day, we're sitting there eating dinner, and he goes, "Man, I don't feel like I'm using my skills. I go, "Well, what are you doing?" He goes, "I just put a well in." Well, how many people was that going to give fresh water to? Well, about 5,000 a day. And I go, "You just saved 5,000 lives. I do
Oh my
40
God.
cases each time I come. You've touched more lives than I ever will." And he's like, "Oh, you're right. I never even thought about that." So yeah, yeah. So they're very close. When we go, we work through the local pastors. That way we figure out there's an announcement of what's coming. They call it a brigade. And so there's some skin in the game. There's a very small fee for them to get in and then be seen, and then go from there as far as what they need. But yeah, the other thing is, I mean, their dental care is horrible, and I mean, these kids come and they with like no local, they'll get their teeth pulled. I mean, they're tough. Or just doing the hernias. Like here's a great story. This guy comes in. He's got this great cowboy hat. We always make sure they have a ride home. And he says, "Oh, absolutely." So I had like little lipomas, little fat things under his skin. So 4 small incisions, really simple, all under local. Stitch them up, steri strips, band-aids. He leaves. He comes back about 4 hours later in a white T-shirt. He looks like he's got 4 gunshot wounds with like blood. So he's done something to make them bleed. And I go, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, I was riding my horse." So his ride home was on a horse. It wasn't in a car or a motorcycle or. So I'm like, okay, there are cultural differences here. I got to be aware of these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't even think about some things, and I love what you said about how grateful the wife was that the husband uh, woke up after the surgery, and how it puts things into perspective. Like, I don't know, I am guessing, but for them it's like you're a god. You were able to bring him back to life
Right.
after he
Yeah.
seemed to have passed away, and it's something that we know it's not how it works,
Right.
but for them it's magic
Yeah.
from some points of view, and they have a different kind of appreciation for this, and um, yeah, it's just a different way of seeing life, and
Right.
all of the simple things that,
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I was
Yeah.
blessed to go to Europe when I was 10. My dad's dad had passed away, left him some money, and my mom was, Irish. So she was there in World War II, which I, unfortunately, because she passed away, never really got a chance to ask her what that was like. But what they did, because I looked at something recently in all the stuff I have with her, they would move the Irish over to England to work on materials, whether they're war materials or whatever, for about 6 months to a year, and then they move them back over to Ireland where it's safer because Ireland wasn't being bombed. And so just being able to go to Europe, there was a moment we took a tour. You get to experience they do things differently in different countries, and it's not that we're right or they're right. There's different ways to do things. But I think the most humbling moment on that trip was we're standing and the guide says your left foot's in France and your right foot is in America. I'm like, how could that be? Well, the French gave America soil in France. It's their graveyard to World War II people who gave the ultimate cost, right? And it's acre after acre after acre of white crosses. And I said, I need to bring my boys. So I've taken my oldest, who's 25 there when he was 18. I've got two more that are 15 and 17. So, yeah, just the humble moment of what the cost of freedom has been for the world. So,
Wow,
yeah,
that that's so amazing. And we again we forget these things, but they happened, and there were so many people that gave their lives for just the simple things that we might complain about and might think about, that they're just here, and they were here as they are since forever, you know.
yeah. I mean, you just summed it up. That's the gratitude, right? That these people
Exactly.
were there. They had the courage to face the ultimate, sacrifice the ultimate for us, right? So again, gratitude's that taking it out of my hands and someone else's, and this was an action that was, you know, what we have gratitude about is, or it'd be a different place. I think there was even a TV series where, we didn't beat the Germans, and now the Japanese and the Germans are divided. I think it was Man in the High Tower or something, um, dividing up the world between Japan and Germany. So interesting concept.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I was trying to think about how it was for them in those moments, and I'm thinking that it's the gratitude we can feel for their sacrifice is even bigger, in the sense that we, the ones that are here right now, were their motivation, you know.
Right,
They knew that most probably they won't get back home, but they knew that they did what they did for their families and for all of the people back home, so that they will enjoy what we're enjoying today. And I think this is such a wonderful concept. And um, of course we don't always think about it, but it's a good moment in different times of the year to think about this, and to think about the fact that there were so many people before us that actually enabled us to live the way we live, and to have the amazing things that we're able to have and to enjoy.
right, correct. Yeah, you're definitely an empath. You put yourself in their shoes, so you can understand what they were doing and why, which is really great.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm thinking about all of the lives that you've saved, and all of the sacrifices that you had to make to save those lives as well. And it's it's fascinating for me how we humans are able to do these kinds of things, and how much gratitude we can feel for the fact that there are people like you that are um, basically devoting their life to helping other people, to making them whole again or better again. And this fact that we live in a world where we have this kind of support, for me
Right,
this is fascinating. And I know that this has been like this since I was born, since you were born, but it's not something that has always been like this, you know. And I at least always love to think about these kinds of things that we got used to having in our life, but that doesn't mean that they were always here, and that we always had these kinds of opportunities. So I extend my appreciation to you, to the work that you're doing. And yeah,
yeah. It's, well,
I'm
I
really
mean, it's
happy.
just like I said, it's so rewarding. It's hard not to do it. So I think it's interesting. I've had several colleagues retire, and if they don't have an exit plan to do something with their hands, then they get depressed, they gain weight, they get sick. Yeah. So, yeah, gratitude is something that's built into us. And I think there's sociologists that would say altruism, what people do to serve others, that sacrifices to themselves, um, is something that's uniquely human, or at least from higher brain. Because sometimes you'll see like a small child fall over at a zoo in a gorilla exhibit, and the gorilla lifts the baby out of the thing and hands it back, right? So at some level, I think there's some other creatures that do have altruism, but it is a separating characteristic that we have, because it's really not Darwinish. If it's survival of the fittest, why are we going to risk our lives? So
Yeah, that's so true. And you are actually doing that when you go to a country where there is such a high crime rate. You're basically putting your life on the line, and I think that's amazing as well to do that, to help people. Is exactly as you said, like you put your life on the line to help other people in a place that's basically far away from home, that you could just, in theory, forget about,
right, yeah, and I lead as a team. I can't do what I do without having other people help me. So a scrub nurse, there's a story in the book that, broke down this one nurse, and it was a miracle that she was there, because I didn't ask for a real scrub nurse to come on the trip, but it turns out there she was, right? So, and then that whole surgery really not being able to be done because there wasn't any CO2 in the tank for a gallbladder surgery. But yeah, I think just realizing, doing stuff for other people makes a difference. And again, like I said, it's just like buying coffee in line for someone behind you, that it just gives you this feeling. And when you just try it, if you haven't done that out there listening to this podcast, acts of kindness are part of being, gracious, having gratitude. So see how you feel.
Exactly. Yeah. Gratitude is actually works both ways. So it's great when we experience it, when we feel it, but when we do acts of kindness and the other person feels grateful, we feel it too, and it's a wonderful exchange
Yeah.
when we're able to do that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about some of the miracles that you've experienced in your life, and if you would like to share a few of them, because um, I think this is miracles. Just this word is so beautiful, and it has gratitude in it. So if you would be so kind to
Yeah.
share some
I'd
of
love
the
to. So
miracles.
the biggest one I started with on this podcast was, we were in Tela, which is on the Atlantic coast side of Honduras, at about 110 bed hospital. We're doing 21 surgeries in 3 days. You got to be very flexible, because I didn't learn what those were until a day and a half, and I have to bring all my own supplies, suture, not necessarily the instruments, but I bring them just in case. Mesh if I'm doing hernia repair. So just all this stuff, laparoscopic stuff if I'm doing a gallbladder. And then I get the list a day and a half. So there are a couple things I wouldn't have had. Put those in. I had 8 bags of luggage with all my stuff. And we got there, and then we went to the hospital fairly quickly. We wrapped all these instruments and suture. I forget how many packs we had. And within that day, they changed the list to 20-something cases. And so, again, you got to be flexible. And it turns out we just wrapped the exact number of packs that we needed, because we actually added another one on, which is one of the recovery room's fathers, who had something that needed to be fixed in his life. He wanted to end his life because it was hurting him so much. And she was so grateful that we'd done this, because she watched us operate for 3 days and said, "Hey, could you do this?" And I don't know that we have another pack, and we did.
Wow.
But the first case that we did was a laparoscopic gallbladder. So you're using a camera, you have to inflate the abdomen with CO2 to blow it up, to have room to see what you need to see. And Hondurans don't have like American gallbladders. You have an attack, you get referred to a doc, they do an ultrasound, they confirm you got stones, then you're referred to a surgeon, and you get that taken out before it's been there for 20 years, now scarred in. And so there's a whole setup that has to happen. And their local surgeon, who looked like almost a high school student, so another cultural difference, they do only like 6 years of college, med school, and their residency. So they're like, so I realized I'm training this person. So the cauteries was not the same. It had to be hooked up, and they didn't know how to hook it up. So clearly they don't do that many laparoscopic gallbladder surgeries. The suction was with the shop vac. So, but the key was that I realized I had brought along with me someone who's an EMT who helps me at the other when we're in Copan. That's all outpatient stuff, and he can scrub. He just has to put sterile gloves on and assist. And in this case, we have to go full gown, glove, the whole all barrier, right? And I realized Jason cannot do this. He's not qualified. I've taken him to the OR a couple times to see what real cases look like, but he doesn't know how to set up all the instruments on a back table. And I'm standing there, and then Leah is there, and I'm like, Leah, what do you do? And she says, well, I'm a scrub nurse for a cardiothoracic team. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I go, I can't do this without you, because you've got to set this up. If we didn't, we'd be kicked out today. We'd be going home. So she started to cry, because the cardiac surgeons are horrible to her. They don't think she's part of a team. They just use and abuse her. And she's like, I've never thought that I really am necessary to do this surgery, even cardiac surgery. And you've made me feel my worth. And so she stopped crying. We got it all together. We went in. Now the miracle in this case is you need to inflate the belly to 15 millimeters of mercury pressure. It stopped at 12. And I looked at the device that inflates and monitors the pressure and controls it so it's not a dangerous thing. And it said it was out of gas. I look at the tank, big gigantic green tank, and its dial says 0. And I just basically looked down, prayed to myself, and then I looked up at the monitor and it was at 15. I go, okay, if I run out of gas, I can do it the old fashioned way by making a bigger incision and then taking it out. So I've got plan B. And so I get in there, and this lady's got cirrhosis of her liver, which means she's not going to clot well. She's got, because of when the liver gets real scarred, the blood can't get through it very well. So all the veins that go into the liver get gigantic. So they're all encased over this gallbladder. I have to pry that off of the gallbladder just to begin removing the gallbladder, get into some bleeding. I got to show him how to get out of that complication. So it was perfect for him, because he got to see how you did the most horrible gallbladder you ever had to do. It took an hour and a half, and there were times when I had to irrigate and suction, so I was sucking CO2 out. I never lost 15 millimeters of mercury. At the end of the case, the Honduran scrub nurse came over, or a nurse came over and said, you shouldn't have been able to do this. There's been no gas in this tank.
Oh my God.
And because it took me a while, I turned around and I looked at the clock on the wall, and it was stopped at 7:07, and it was the 7th day of the month. Seven's God's number, right? So 777. So the fact that there's no way that should have even happened. On the same trip, we were where we would sit and just kind of wait for the next case, was in a closet. There was only one window, and this picture's in the book. I'm sitting next to a 4-drawer metal cream-colored filing cabinet with a garbage bag hanging off the side. And Jason, my friend, took this black and white photo on his iPhone, and he goes, "Look at this! Isn't this cool?" And I go, "Yeah, it's black and white." I go, "But did you see this?" And he looks back. I go, "Where's this light coming from?" So over my left shoulder, coming off of the bag or and there's only a window on my left, so I'm in the shade. There's no reason that there can be light there at all, and there's this light, and I didn't
Mm,
sense anything. I look at the bag, and I'm like, but you can't explain it. No flash on the camera. It's just there. It gives
amazing,
you chills when you see it. So, yeah, it's crazy.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it, and I'm sure you know this quote about um, the way we see the world, like everything is a miracle, or that nothing is a miracle. And I think it's these are of course amazing things, but it also takes the eyes to see it, to see them, you know.
right. If you don't look, you can't see, and if you don't listen, you can't hear. And I've had a ton of nurses ask me, how can you be a doc and have faith? And it's like, well, okay, 99.9% of astrophysicists and cosmologists believe that Big Bang theory is right. So that's light separated from darkness, right? That there's a beginning. And in Hawking, his book, History of the Universe, and the second one, which is briefer, he gets to that point. Well, that means there was something that existed before. And all he says is that's philosophical question, and we won't go there. So, but I just say, hey, look, what science is the study of nature. It's a study of God's creation. We use that. We know certain herbs have things that make us better. We know that aspirin can, prevent clotting by inhibiting platelets. So we study what God created and we use it to our advantage. So, what's the problem? So, yeah,
Yeah, I think this is very powerful, and like you said, they shouldn't be separate because everything is part of creation,
right, right,
regardless of what we believe in. It's all part of creation itself.
yeah.
We are
Well,
part of it. Nature is part of it.
yeah. Interestingly, our history, or until 1850 or so, which is when Darwin published his book, which took him 20 years to write, The Origin of Species. Our science books were the study of science and philosophy. So you examine inside the box and outside the box. So, but then, again, so I think, and the reason why they asked me that question is science is complete proof, right? I mean, in theory, Einstein's theory of relativities have 4 assumptions in them. So, I mean, that's like a leap of faith. So, um, versus, uh, Christianity or faith is based on faith. It's a leap. You can't prove it by its definition. So, and people don't like that. They like to know.
Exactly, exactly. But before you can prove um, anything that has to do with science in general, you have to have faith that something that you see is in a certain way, and you just need to find proof that it's actually like that,
Right. Right.
scientific proof. So basically, they're quite interconnected, even more than we realize.
Yeah. It's true.
So we're nearing the end of our time together, and I wanted to ask you, who are some people in your life that you're very grateful for, that you would like to mention?
Um, I would definitely say um, my mother and father, who created me in Michigan and had me in California. Uh, he wasn't there for that. That's another story. He never knew he had a son. And then my
Oh my
parents who
God.
raised me, yeah, and then my grandmother who I dedicated the book to because she died in her mid 80s, and she was always a light. I don't know how many older folks that I see that are just bitter about life, but she never was. I mean, she was like one of the first women to graduate from UC Berkeley's Bolt Hall Law School
Wow.
and got highly discriminated against because it was a man's job, right? So they wanted to make her a clerk, but she didn't carry any bitterness from that. It was just what it was and an experience, and lived through it, and got to practice her field. So yeah, just amazing lady.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much of an impact that had on you, and um, how much gratitude you got to feel throughout the years thanks to her. And yeah, by just her example and the way that she was, and the way she was able to overcome all of the difficulties. Probably that it's something that you are bringing here right now.
Right.
That's from her, and
Yeah.
that's very beautiful. And
Yeah.
the reason why I love asking this question is that in many ways the people that have raised us, that might not be with us anymore, are still living through us, through the things that they've taught us, and that they gave us on a spiritual level. And I think that's something really beautiful that we can all be grateful for.
Yeah, totally agree with you. That's the story in the book. If people have to read that. It's when I had to move everything out of my parents' house. So that chapter you'll see when you realize your parents are still within you.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So where can our audience get the book?
So Amazon, just put Craig Thayer and then put saved. It's got more to the title, but you'll get it's also on Audible, which I think you can also get on Amazon. So you have to put up with my voice on the Audible. Like I said, I was talking with Georgian before. In the book, you'll learn that I have dyslexia. So I've never considered a disability. It's just made me a slower reader. So you have to put up with my Audible.
So once again, the name of the book is Saved, One Trauma Surgeon's True Accounts of the Miracles in His Life.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing your story, for being so open and vulnerable, and for being who you are, and for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Georgian. I mean, you're a light to this world, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Gratitude Seeker, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this interview. I really appreciate it. And if you could think of one person that would also benefit from it, share it with them. It might actually be the inspiration that they need to make their day, or maybe even their life, much better. Thank you so much once again. This has been Georgian Benta. Don't forget to keep seeking and spreading gratitude.